It's not easy trying to always put on a brave face, always trying to be the one, that keeps it together, I guess. My name is Kelsey. I'm a registered nurse. I work at a mental health organization for children and adolescents. There's always this innate chaos that's going on, and it's like, the best way I can describe it is that you feel almost helpless sometimes, and you feel like you're trying to just maintain your focus in that moment while there's just so many different pieces going on around you.
My full name is Julie Su. I am a registered nurse working frontline of the COVID pandemic. Earlier in my nursing career, I cared for a patient with end-stage alcohol cirrhosis, liver complications, brain complications, overall body decline.
There's anxieties of other staff who are also trying to figure out what does this mean? You have to make decisions, and sometimes, the scariest part is making the wrong decision. And that's a reality. Sometimes you'll make the wrong choice.
The experience stayed with me because he himself was a very sweet man. Unfortunately, during COVID, no one was allowed to visit him. And I think that was somewhat detrimental to his overall health status, because I'm sure decisions would have been made with more sound of mind if he had been given the option to discuss it over with someone else.
That's what weighs on us the most. And an example of that is putting a client into isolation. We know that that's what's best for their physical health. But then on the flip side, we know that that's probably isn't what's best for their mental health.
All I could think about was the least we could do was make him comfortable. We weren't even allowed to do that. We weren't able to give him scheduled pain medication. We weren't able to give in to allow him to eat and drink when he wanted to. Towards the end of, unfortunately, his prognosis, he was very delirious, but he was still so very sweet and cooperative, and I think it made it even worse that he still wasn't allowed visitors until he was made end of life. I didn't feel very good about that case. I didn't feel like I advocated enough. I was sad when he passed. I was sad because he was a very pleasant person to be around. I was sad because he was very cooperative, knowing that he wanted these treatments, so he had to undergo uncomfortable procedures and painful times, and he had to have the patience to tolerate all of this. I was sad. I was sad because he was a very courageous person for trying all of this. But unfortunately, I felt really frustrated. I felt like it didn't have to be this way. He didn't have to be in pain. He didn't have to be hospitalized. We could have found him a more comfortable location where he wasn't constantly listening to the bells and whistles of a hospital, having people go in and out of the room, and not being able to have his friends nearby at all times. I felt like there could have been a different ending.
That's why it's such a big deal, when you have to put someone in isolation, because you don't know what their past experience was like. Maybe they were forced to stay in their room. Maybe they were locked in their room. Maybe they weren't allowed to come out. Maybe it was punishment. You don't know. Maybe their bedroom was where abuse happened. All of these regulations, it's so easy to be isolation, 14 days. But where I work, it's so much more complicated than that. It's not just, stay in your room for 14 days. It's, hey, potentially relive all the trauma that you have.
I think if I were him, I would struggle and fight. I would try my best. I would try all the possible treatments. But if I were him, I would have a certain threshold where, we've done all these things. At what point do I say, this is more pain than it's worth? The results are all the same, and I would rather have a good ending than one where I struggled and found no comfort. But I'm not him. I can't make these decisions for him. I can't speak on his behalf, or even, I don't even know his full life story. So my moral dilemma was, I have to continue treating him, and I have to continue providing medication and treatments that may be more than uncomfortable. They may be restrictive. They may feel worse than the actual process of dying.
I know that if I let my emotions control or dictate too much, then I'm shifting that focus away from helping the client in that moment. I've just had to learn to compartmentalize what I'm seeing and being able to acknowledge my feelings in that moment, but also being able to say okay, I'm anxious about this situation right now, or hey, I'm upset about this situation right now, but I'm gonna put it in the folder, where it says, here's my emotions of today, and then I'm gonna open up my other folder in my brain that's okay, but we've gotta move on, we've gotta get stuff done, and I have to be there for my clients. I remember I was giving the news to a client that they were COVID positive. And I remember walking into the client's room and saying, hey, you tested positive for COVID. And there was kind of this audible silence, after. And of course, sometimes silence can be uncomfortable. And I just remember the first words that came out of that client's mouth were, am I gonna die? One of the hardest parts about COVID is you can't really say to them no. You can't. It's not easy trying to always put on a brave face, always trying to be the one, that keeps it together, I guess. I think that I could sit here and tell you that I'm I could sit here and say oh, I don't bring my work home. But that's not true. I don't think that that's true for really anyone. Now with kind of COVID happening, it's kind of, it's both terrifying and rewarding at the same time.
There was a very, very, very young man, like in his 20s, who needed a lung transplant because COVID had completely scarred up his lungs, caused too much damage for it to be reversed in any short period of time. In fact, he may never come off of extracorporeal machines. And I think that's shocking that someone in their 20s who was previously healthy but now requires a lung transplant because of COVID and can't survive outside of an ICU without a new pair of lungs. That was definitely one of the worst moments worst realizations I've had about the disease and the virus, because I didn't think it would attack someone so young, so much, so severely. And I definitely have heard of people who have passed from it, and they were very young as well. But when you do see it, and when you do personally witness it, it is very shocking. Definitely has an impact.
Typically, we try to keep our emotions, in a place where our clients can't always, pick up on them or can't always, feed off of them, if you will. But I guess really at the end of the day, like the hardest piece of working has been like when I felt like ethically challenged. Like, because I've just felt like they call it, moral distress. Really, my values are kind of focusing on like really small changes can mean like so much, and that's something that's really kept me grounded throughout this. I mean, there's definitely been a lot of hard times. Me giving up one Christmas is nothing in the grand scheme of like being able to be there for people who are easily going through like the most fearful time of their life.
Please come and work with me for a day. Like, I don't need you to do the things. I choose to stay. I know there are people who need me. I know that the system needs more staffing. And for every person that walks out, there are patients out there that need us. And for every patient that comes in because of carelessness, please know that you are endangering other people's lives as well as your own. And think about how you would feel if you were another patient who really needed the care but didn't receive it because of someone else's carelessness. I just need you to watch what I do for one shift. I need them to see 12 hours worth of work. That's all.
My one sister has a lot of medical conditions. She also has autism, so that's kind of opened me up to a new world where, like even for people who didn't necessarily fit, the public's idea of like what it meant to be, a human or a successful human. When I grew up, it was like a big deal if like my sister, didn't pee in her diaper that day. It was like, like that's a good day, and I think when you grow up in a family that, little things can make a really big difference. It helps you in your professional life to kind of go at things from the same lens.
I gave so much of myself away, and I was very burnt out. Having the exposure in nursing school, seeing different walks and different areas of healthcare has made me realize that it is a massive, massive beast in Canada. It is a big part of everybody's existence, whether it's in the background or something that they think about every day in the forefront.
Some of my mental health clients, it's okay, like you got out of bed today. Like that's huge. That's like how we can measure some of our success.
Self-care is very, very, very important. And I'm very glad that I discovered my burnout before I continued further. I took a little hiatus. And now that I'm back, I'm very much aware of how I feel impacts my nursing practice and the way I care for my patients and the way I present myself and what I have left to give in the tank.
My energy is so important to my work that when I come home, like I'm not as kind as I maybe would have been before. I'm not, as supportive of like the people around me than maybe I should have been. And, some people, might be like, well, you have to like be able to do your self-care. And it's not even that, it's just when you see a lot of things at work, it makes it really hard to pay attention to small things outside of work as well. And you almost kind of become insensitive to the people in your personal life sometimes because, like, in a weird way, you resent them because you know that they don't understand.
I used to let my family and friends I trust them. I trust their decisions. I let them make their own decisions without any bias or influence. But after seeing someone who's in their 20s needing a lung transplant due to COVID complications, I decided to be really naggy and very forthcoming about how I truly believe they need to be vaccinated, and that my mom used to believe herd immunity was how she was going to receive her safety net. But I told her herd immunity doesn't work if everybody doesn't get vaccinated. So I've always let her know. I also let her know that I have seen young people pass. I've seen young people need transplants, and I don't think my mom, who's in her 50s, should be taking this kind of risks. She works regularly. She is in and out. She lives a very active lifestyle. And she's actually signed up for a vaccine, and it's going to happen next week.
So you convinced her?
I absolutely have convinced my mother to get vaccinated.
I grew up with a family who's really supportive. They have always kind of been there to help me through my tough times, and my family has always been very supportive of accepting people for their differences, accepting people as they are, accepting people for their faults. In my family, it's always been measured by, love versus measured by, monetary things, or like how much money someone has.
My hero personally would be my mom. My mom raised me as a single working parent. She came to this country as an immigrant when she was 31 and did not speak a lick of English. Had no idea how North America works. She had only ever lived in China. And she worked as a teacher there. She had a very highly respected job, and she gave all that up for her family. And when they got divorced, it was really hard on her, but she kept going. And I am so proud of my mom for doing that. She learned English by taking night classes while working days. She, at one point, had 3 jobs to be able to afford 4 extracurricular lessons for me. My mom made sure my homework was always done, and she was very strict as a kid, and I'm shocked that she had that kind of energy and mentality after having a full-time job as well as going to school to ensure that I was raised properly. And to this day, she lives a very full and active life. She still works full-time. She's full of energy. Cooper keeps her very young, and she has a fun social life that unfortunately COVID has put a bit of a damper into. I think that after so many barriers and so much turmoil in her life, she's still able to have this positive, upbeat attitude. She's still able to keep her head on her shoulders and not give up and really come above the struggle. That's what makes her my hero.
I don't know how I would made it through or even be the person that I am today, without, my family by my side. Just even my parents, what they've taught me, in terms of, how to be resilient and how to really, know what's important and know what it means to be there for each other. Of course, like any family, we argue, we bicker, we've got good times, bad times, but at the end of the day, I've been really lucky that I've been blessed with the support system that I have.
I think there's just something so special about the therapeutic power of having your dog be with you regardless of how you feel and regardless of where you are in life. I think that Cooper plays a giant, he's massive in my life.
How was the experience getting a tattoo?
It was I have multiple tattoos. Getting the first one down the spine was not a good idea. Nobody told me about that. I got a tattoo right down the spine, my first tattoo, that says in Latin, primum non nocere, which means first do no harm. The meaning of it continues to grow as I continue to grow in my nursing career as well as my personal life. But I mean, it didn't deteriorate me from getting further tattoos, but I don't recommend getting your first tattoo down the spine. I have to say I've applied it to more than just my professional life and how I take care of myself. I think it really just applies to my overall life now. I'm trying to do more good. I'm trying to be a better person. I'm trying to be more considerate as well in every person's perspective that I come across. So say a scenario involves multiple perspectives to this person or me, but it could also mean first no harm in the greater picture, or how far in the future are we thinking down. There's a lot of things that I am now way more sensitive to, whereas when I was younger and I first got the tattoo, I was less inclined to think from another perspective. And I hope that the meaning will continue to grow with me, because I didn't think it would be this deep when I first got it. There's so many layers to first do no harm. When I first got it, it was purely professional. Now it's come to the point where I have to apply it to myself as well as to other people and to the scenario. Yeah, it's also figuratively and literal because it's a very deep tattoo. And I did not anticipate that.
I would say it's emotionally shocking because as a young person myself, we always have this feeling of invincibility, that we're young and, you know, YOLO. If I go out because I'm vaccinated, then I'm going to go out because I want to, and because I'm young, I'm going to recover. Well, I don't really think that way anymore after seeing that particular patient. I think it's taught me fear, and it's taught me a bit more appreciation for the life I have right now. I have grown more in my appreciation for the lifestyle I have right now and my body and my health, as well as my family's body and their health and their lifestyle, which is something I would not have gained without that experience, because I wouldn't have personally witnessed the impact that and the very, very strong impact it had. And that's something that I carry with me every day, and that's something that I remind my family about and my friends if I see any of them being reckless or throwing precautions into the wind, because they haven't seen it personally. They haven't been there to witness how bad it can be. They've heard about it, but it's not really the same as I witnessing how much care goes into a 20-year-old who's got lung failure. It's a part of my job. As someone who has a background in health sciences, I believe it's a part of my duties to keep my family and my friends safe.